Welcome to edition 20 of our Killa No Filla podcast with me, Rachel Fairburn, and Kiri Pritchard McLean. Just before we start, we'll do our usual disclaimer. This isn't hero worship. We have strong father figures in our lives. We do this podcast because we have a mutual interest in serial killers, and as long as we're doing this, it stops us from writing to them in prison.
Episode 20.
Number 20.
I quite liked on the intro how you said 20.
Did I?
You said 20.
20.
So I was expecting a 20 from
20.
you.
Well, I start off professional, and by the end it'll be effing and blinding. So let's see how it goes.
Well, we decided to do a woman, didn't we? And it's quite hard to find a good woman, as I'm sure many men's rights activists will attend to.
And many men who listen to this might be thinking.
But it is hard to, what I mean is it's hard to find an interesting female serial killer because they're all baby farmers or poisoners.
Yeah.
Which this one was, but she's got a bit of she's got a bit of
pizzazz.
spunk to her, hasn't she? Yeah.
They're always, if they don't often operate on their own.
Yeah.
They're usually with someone else.
Peer pressure.
Yeah. So she's interesting, and her name is Tillie Klimek.
Yeah, Ottilie is her name, but she went by the name of Tillie. So she was born in... Well, she did... How many victims? They know of 9, but they think it was anywhere up to 20.
Yeah, which is debatable, because I
Yeah.
think they might have lumped a lot in and just gone, I'll just get rid of that.
There was a lot of killing going on at the time, which we'll get to in a second. Yeah. So I think that quite a lot was passed off on her, although I think there's a fair few dogs to add to that count as well.
Definitely.
Not a dog lover. Paul O'Grady would not like this woman.
She was born in 1876. She was a Polish immigrant.
Yeah.
She was born in Poland, obviously, and she was one of the first wave of Polish immigrants to go over to America. They were called Zaszeleben.
Yeah, sorry if there's any people who are listening who understands Polish, but the wave of immigration she belonged to was Zaszeleben, which means for bread, and they were literally moving because they couldn't eat in their own country.
I was just going to say, sounds delicious, and then when you carried on, I was like, don't say that. It's fine.
But because she was part of this sort of this wave of immigrants that weren't wealthy and were moving over, they were very impoverished when they came over. They think it kind of went against her in the trial because when they reported on her in the newspapers, which had a lot to do with how trials came out, she was reported as having, her family as having the demeanour of peasants, which means that Stephen Avery of Making a Murder fame should have really learned some lessons from that case. Because it's a very similar thing that's gone on there. Now, I'd love to enjoy that joke with Rachel, but you won't watch that, will you?
No, I won't. And I'll tell you why I won't watch it. Because I'm sick of people telling me I should watch it. Because every time people come up to me and go, have you seen Making a Murderer? You'd love it. I'm like, don't assume that you know me. Don't you come over here telling me what I'd like. So I've refused to watch it for now.
What else have you refused over the years?
Breaking Bad.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's so many people that like that. Most people are stupid. No, I'm not on board with that. What else? I watched The Jinx. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Never seen Downton Abbey. Not interested. What's it? There's
Bake
loads
Off, I've not seen.
I've seen bits of it. Paul Hollywood's very sleazy.
He is, isn't he?
He looks like he'd go...
But he doesn't even do innuendo. It's not like, oh, it's got a soggy bottom or whatever. He's like, and then I'd stick my dick in it and then pastry.
I refer to him as old school BBC. I'm sure he's done nothing wrong. I'm sure he's a perfectly, legitimate gentleman, but something a bit sleazy.
Yeah, he's
and
a bit creepy.
90s boy hair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's about 18 months away from having curtains, isn't he?
Yeah. He's one of those people, though, because I have quite bad taste in men and strange crushes that sometimes I go, do I No. Maybe just... No, definitely not.
So that's Bake Off sorted out. Basically, Tillie was sort of pretty unremarkable. She just lived in Little Poland and was sort of just part of the community.
Which was a very strong community because Tillie had a very strong Polish accent despite living there since she was a baby. Which is...
So she didn't have the Chicago accent at all?
Not at all.
Is it like when, what's his name, John Barrowman goes home to his parents and goes from being like, I'm John Barrowman, or whatever his name is, to being like, hello, mother and father. Have you seen that documentary with him?
I have seen it. I'm just wondering who's keeping the pretense up. Are they like, oh shit, John's there.
Oh, John's coming home. God damn it, am I sick of this accent.
Hello!
She was reported as having sort of a normal, unremarkable life until she was about 45. The Pete Postlethwaite of serial killers, if you will. So basically, this is like the worst midlife crisis ever.
At the time in Chicago as well, it was a weird time, wasn't it?
Yeah, very weird.
You tell me this, because I didn't know this.
Yeah.
There was a lot of murders committed by women.
Loads. Well, because Chicago, the musical, big fan. Have you seen that?
Nope.
No. It's got Oscars, overrated.
Nope. They just hand those out willy-nilly.
They do, as long as you're white.
As long as you're white, you're fine.
So basically, Chicago the musical is based on this time, and what was happening was that women, apparently, murders by women went up 400% in 40 years, which is just incredible. And women were getting off at trials if they were pretty. So there was these two famous cases, one of Stylish Belva and the other one of Beautiful Balua, which, I don't know, they sound like paint colours, they don't sound like women, who were let off murders that they definitely committed because they were very beautiful and the all-male juries were letting them off. Basically, Tillie, she was the first woman to be prosecuted, and essentially she was too ugly to be innocent.
Unbelievable.
It's really depressing, isn't
it?
On a scale of ugliness, like, I really hope that I just tip into the potentially be innocent.
It's astonishing to think that she's too beautiful to be a killer.
It's just shit.
Very strange.
That anyone who thinks that deserves to get shot in the head by their manic partner.
It was all male juries as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, all male juries. And there was, I mean, the papers had a lot to do with it at the time, and they would make sort of, just like the musical, they would sort of make heroes out of these poor women, and they'd go, you know, they'd imply that they had scary husbands, or, you know, I know I had a lover, but that was because my husband was working too much. And but they were told to show a bit of ankle while they were on the stand, and they'd be let off.
I'm going to try that on stage.
No, really?
If I'm dying, I'm just going to show a bit of ankle.
Oh, I'd whip out a nip,
See
mate,
what
if
happens.
I thought it'd get me a 10 spot at the comedy store.
10, you'd be lucky. 5. I don't think Don Ward listens to this.
Well, I don't think he listens to women in general.
No.
But there we go.
White noise. Someone left the fridge open. She's just being... She's normal until she's 45.
Yeah.
As far as we know. Nothing's kicking off. It's just ordinary. Ordinary life until she marries Joseph Mitkowitz in 1914.
So life really kicks off with her when she's about 45. It's in 1914, start of the First World War. Mm-hmm. She bumps off her husband. Yeah. She poisons him.
She married Joseph Mitkowitz, and she had a life insurance policy on him for $1,000, and she poisoned him, and she claimed the money. And then she doesn't waste any time.
No, what I love about her is she really cracks on when it comes to...
She gets a real taste
finding
for
something else to sit on. So she remarried just a month later, and the article I was reading was like, just a few days after Valentine's Day. It's like, well, that is just a day then, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not like you're like, ooh, 17th of February. It's just a day.
The only time you'd be doing something for Valentine's on like the 17th of February is...
If she'd been in a coma.
Or if you were really tight with money and you were just waiting at the bargain bin going, oh, they'll do. She'll love them.
The only Valentine's present I've ever had from my partner was when he got me... It was on offer a few days after Valentine's Day. Like in a pink box. It was a chocolate heart, a giant one. Ooh. With like a little animal on it, but it had a whoop sticker on it because it had been smashed. So he basically gave me a shattered heart a few days after Valentine's Day.
Was it tasty though?
It was fucking delicious,
Excellent.
mate. I rattled through it. So she remarried a month later, and then 3 months after that, she killed this next husband.
She'd married Joseph Ruskowski. He was insured for $2,000, and she claimed that money.
And with that money, she took her lover, Joseph Guzgowski, on a trip to Milwaukee. I hope they didn't visit the chocolate factory. Little reference there for any Jeffrey Dahmer fans. And while they were away on this holiday that her dead husband had paid for with her lover that she was cheating on said husband with, she... old loose lips Tillie, in 2 ways by the sounds of it. She told...
Well, she was in Milwaukee, knocking back the bloody sauce. Let me tell you something.
What was it called? Schlitz.
Schlitz, yeah.
So she told Joseph about the murders. She said, I killed my husbands. And then she said, shortly after that, do you want to marry me? And Joseph said, no, thank you, but thank you for asking. Yeah. And this really pissed her off. And she was like, you have to ask me if you want me. Like, you have to ask me to marry you. And he was like, I don't want to ask you to marry me because you're mad and you've killed 2 husbands.
I mean, he must have had to resist being the most romantic city in the world. The city of Milwaukee. City of love.
But it was amazing. She even then threatened him she basically threatened to prosecute him with this thing called the Mann Act, spelled with 2 N's. And it was this weird law that allowed people to prosecute their partners for all... Basically, people were allowed to be prosecuted for immorality, and that included consensual sex. Oh. So she was like, if you don't marry me, I'm going to get you sent under with this act. And
for enjoying intimacy with me.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a very weird situation. So he was like, well, if you get me arrested for that, I'm going to tell them that you poisoned your last 2 husbands. Now, if you know a woman is capable of double homicide, I suggest you don't threaten her, because very shortly after that, Joseph was poisoned with arsenic.
They don't learn, do they?
I've got no sympathy for some people.
And she cracks on there. She just keeps on going.
Yeah.
Did he have any insurance on him? I don't think he did he?
No, not according to this.
It was just a convenience killing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So then we're on to 4 victims now, eh?
Yeah, in 1919, wasn't this?
Yeah. Frank Kupsik. Did she marry him?
Yes.
Yeah, she married him. He was insured for $1,000. She must have shed loads of money as well by this point. She used to tell... She had a lover as well, didn't she?
Yeah, called John.
John the lover. And she used to tell Frank that he wouldn't live long. She used to tell neighbours.
Yeah, she used to threaten him. She was really sort of like brazen, really ballsy with it. So she married this Frank guy, and then what would happen, apparently, Frank would leave for work in the morning. She's at home, she doesn't need to work, she got thousands in the bank. And then as he left, her lover John would come up and then kiss her on the porch.
I beg your pardon.
At least he didn't kiss her on the back door.
Or the veranda.
For a woman who's described as being ugly and a pretty average-looking woman, she sure is getting through a lot of guys, isn't she?
Isn't she just? So she was going through a lot of men.
It's like when Janice Battersby was having loads of affairs on Coronation Street, and you're like, I'm meant to believe that one person is going to have sex with that, let alone 3.
Yeah, but come on, what would these guys look like?
Oh, that's true.
They can't have been...
Yeah.
You know, we're not talking... Oh, he's a catch. Probably like, oh God, it's Mad John.
I imagine they had the demeanour of peasants, Rachel.
Yeah. She's telling all these neighbours as well, he's not going to live long. Frank, you won't live long, waving off to work and all the rest of it. I just imagine that she'd be saying, yes, he's not got long for this world. And they're like, the old country spirits. those old ways never leave. I think they just think it was something charming. Like,
adorable saying or something they have. Well, actually, she must have quite liked Frank, because basically it took 2 years for him to become ill. And he was really, really sick in bed.
2 years to die.
Yeah, in fact, that's probably more accurate. 2 years to die. He was really sick in bed. And she came in one day to her landlady and was like whooping and cheering and clicking her heels together. And the landlady's like, what's going on? And she was like, look at this. She had a cutout from the newspaper, and it was for an offer on coffins. And they were being sold for $30, which, as we know, like, she's got enough money in the bank to buy several hundred of those. And she was like, only $30. And her landlady was like, yeah, what's this for? And she was like, for Frank. And she's like, how do you know he's going to die? And she went, oh, it's fine, he's 2 inches from death.
That was it. He's got 2 inches, yeah.
Yeah, 2 inches from death, which sounds like a sexual thing, to be honest.
And then poor old Frank as well, is dying. And she's knitting her funeral hat, isn't she?
She went out, so she bought this coffin and she kept it in the basement. The landlady gave her permission. Then she went out and bought black fabric and made a hat for his funeral that she used to make at his bedside, which she got another use out of, didn't she?
She did. She wore it to her trial. What a ledge. I like it.
Yeah, I think she's...
resourceful.
I think she's great.
Yeah.
She's a great bird. She became known locally as a psychic.
She did, because people were like, oh, all these people are dying. She's predicting these deaths. Again, I think it was probably a sign of the times, really, wasn't it? Because people didn't really live long in those days, did they?
No.
And people were, you only had to, like, cough and you were dead.
Yeah.
So I think people were like, oh, she's predicting death.
When the reputation started spreading that she had predicted a couple of her husband's deaths, instead of the logical move, which is like, well, there's a woman who's killing her husbands, they were like, oh, well, she must be a psychic then, because people in the 20s couldn't think. So, also, I think she predicted the death of a dog, which is like, oh, and I suppose there's no foul play involved in that then. to Frank's funeral, which was in 1921.
Yeah.
Apparently, on that day, she was blasting music out the house. She sounds amazing.
I just see when someone says blasting music, you always imagine like rap or something, but then it would have been like, I don't know, the Charleston or something.
Yeah,
so really.
I was imagining gangster rap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And apparently, while he was in the coffin in state in the house, she leant in, grabbed his ear, and said, "You devil, you won't get up anymore."
And I'm sure everybody rolled in the aisles with laughter at that.
So weird.
What a
isn't it?
sense of humour.
Maybe she just loved funerals. Maybe she just, we all like an occasion, don't we?
She obviously loved a wedding.
She'd be one of those people who's like, I want it to be a celebration, everyone wear Hawaiian shirts, and you're like, for fuck's sakes, I've got to go out and buy one of them now. I've got a black dress in the house. She also got $675 of insurance off Frank.
Poor Frank wasn't worth much.
No, he wasn't. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Sad.
He's going to go down in history as being worth fuck all.
The world's shittest corpse.
And then this guy rocked up at a funeral.
This is great. I love this bit.
He was basically like Will Ferrell in Wedding Crashers, in that he turned up...
Not seen it, mate.
Oh, fucking hell, come on.
Not seen it. What can I say?
He turned up and he was scouting for business at the funeral, and he'd heard that she was now single. So he came to have a little nose at her. He was in his 50s. Apparently he was an alcoholic, although he denies that.
Yep. So this is Joseph Klimek, who she gets her surname from, a final surname.
Her final surname, yeah. So he's done alcoholic in denial. That's unusual, isn't it? That's not like it's one of the symptoms.
You've been drinking? No. Are you sure? Yes, I'm positive.
I think the kind of person who wants to marry a 3 times made... What would you call it?
Murderess?
Well, a widower.
Widower.
A 3 times widower.
You say widower, I say
Murderess.
Widow is a man.
Oh, is
when
it?
a man's been widowed. Widow's a woman, widow is a man.
Oh, widower.
Widower is a man, yeah.
Widower.
Is a widower.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And
I said
she's
that
a
because
widow.
my grandma used to say, oh yeah, is a widower.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't know that. Widower just sounds like a... I'm saying it weird, aren't I? Widower?
Widower?
I'm saying it like an American state.
Yeah.
It's not.
Oh, welcome to Widower.
We're from East Widower. And he said, I mean, he sounds like a bit of a chauvinist, but it was the 20s. He said that he married Tillie for a home, and he liked watching her crochet and loved her home cooking. And I imagine his breath stunk of garlic because she'd already started lacing it with arsenic.
He thought that she was quite taken with him because
Yeah.
she burned all the pictures of previous husbands and lovers, put his picture on the mantle, and he said there was no evidence of any man friends.
It's so weird because people were like, weren't you worried about the past that she had? And he went, no, as soon as we were married, she burned all the photos of her husbands and man friends and tore up everything else that was left in the house and all the letters. It's like, oh, well, that's the behaviour of a completely sane woman in that case. Do enjoy your honeymoon.
Well, it's as well a bit like, oh yes, I've took all the pictures of my ex-boyfriends and I just threw them away. They're in a drawer upstairs.
Yeah, of course they were.
We all go up and have a look and a cry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we're talking about me or her now. Not sure what we're on
You're
now.
sounding like a murderess,
Yeah,
mate.
I am.
And then she had a cousin called Nellie, Tillie and Nellie, which sounds adorable until you realise that it racked up a hefty body count between them.
They sound like perfect middle-class children, don't they?
Yeah, Tillie and Nellie and the Labrador Bodie.
Yeah, and Tillie and Nellie, they're not being naughty, they're expressing themselves. Yeah.
That's a dirty protest,
Yeah.
that's what that is. She confided in her cousin, Nellie, and Nellie was like, well, just divorce him, because she was already not very happy with his husband. She's like, no, I'm not going to divorce him. I've got something else planned. And then Nellie was like, I hear you. And then gave her this stuff called Rough on Rats.
Rough on Rats.
Which is the most Chicago 1920s sounding product ever.
Hey buddy, you got a problem? You want to get rough on rats.
But it was this household poison that you could buy anywhere, but it had arsenic in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was her MO. So shortly after that, Joseph started getting ill.
Mm-hmm.
And then his brother, John, got suspicious.
Because not only did he got ill, Joseph, his dogs were dead as well.
Yeah, just like Hitler, kill the dogs first.
Yeah.
And then shoot your kids in the head. That was grim.
Yeah.
Even for this podcast, that was grim. So basically his dogs died, he started getting ill, and John was like, right, something's going on here. So he called the doctor out. The doctor was like, you need to get him to hospital immediately. He's being poisoned with arsenic. Because he had the symptoms of the funny tint on his skin and the breath smelling of garlic.
She was arrested then, October the 26th, 1922. But when she was arrested, she was riffing, wasn't she? Doing a bit of comparing, sort of like giving it this, jokes here, there and everywhere. She was...
Give me a cheer if you're a widower.
Yeah.
Apparently the guy who arrested her, she said to him, the next one I want to cook dinner for is you. You made all my trouble.
That sounds like a great line that if it was Chicago the musical, that they would just burst into song at that point. That'd be great.
You made all my trouble! And then the next day, her cousin was arrested for providing her with the arsenic. Now, while she was in custody and being interviewed, some letters started rocking up, anonymous letters. And one of them said, you need to exhume Frank, because she was just in there for the poisoning of Joseph. They said, you need to exhume Frank because this husband died. Another anonymous letter arrived about Nellie and said, you want to look into her background as well, and he's gone missing in her life. So they started to dig around a bit more. In the meantime, she actually visited Joseph in hospital.
Which is the weirdest scenario. Like, what?
How's that allowed?
The police, go and see your husband.
Yeah. It's so weird. It's like in Jeremy Kyle when they get him to argue and then they send him home in the same car anyway.
It's weird. That is a strange scenario, that. I mean, it's the last thing he'd want to bloody see as well.
Yeah, well, apparently when she turned up, he was like, what the fuck have you been up to? And was like, how long have you been poisoning me for? What have you been doing it? And then she was just like, shut up, giving me shit. And then the nurse apparently came in and was like, would you like a glass of water? To Joseph. And she said, if he's annoying you, just hit him with a piece of 2-before. But then...
It sounds like some really badly written sitcom.
Yeah, it sounds like when a comedian writes the script for Coronation Street one week, doesn't it? Oh, if he's bothering you, just hit him with a bit of 2-before. But apparently, after giving all this sass in her broken English, she kissed him before she left.
Oh.
Which is quite nice. Because a lot of the time so we try and read as much as we can about these murders and things before we talk about them. And you have to go onto all sorts of dubious websites. And they always write down what she said deliberately wrong. Like how she would have said it in broken English.
Oh, that one was brilliant. So there's a bit on Murderpedia and it's obviously about Tillie and it's called The Psychic by Joseph Geringer and it says truetv.com. So it says, Chicago has always claimed a large Polish population, blah, blah, blah. And it says, the people, mostly a God-fearing, law-abiding nationality, would like to forget one of their own, however.
I love that he's written that. That's so patronising. That's when my parents go, they're very clean people. Yeah. When they go to Africa, they're expecting something else.
They're very clean, very respectful. So it goes on, and they called Tillie a psychic, her neighbours did. She had a... uncanny talent of foretelling the future. It goes on to say, this is the great bit, the Klimek family grew worried when its son and brother, Anton, decided to chuck practicality and marry Tillie in 1921. They've all got different names, we must stress.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what these people are called. So, in one, someone's called John, another one is called Anton.
Yeah, another one is called Joseph.
It's ridiculous. So it's saying it married Tillie, and he's written it as he would have said, right? It says, she is a good woman. He shouted
back.
Has
he just spelled it with a V?
Yeah, he has.
Oh, God.
He shouted back at more logical folks. And I'm a healthy man that intends to stay healthy. The healthy man and the new Mrs. Klimek co-signed a last will and testament, leaving all their possessions to each other. And the healthy man turned feeble overnight. And there's a great bit that says before, he was a strong and healthy man when he walked up the aisle. He was in his coffin a week later. Calls her a biddy. Oh, here we go. So he's talking about the prophecies. He says, too sad, Rakowski swiftly became the subject of another of Tillie's nighttime reveries. That is what she told neighbours on her block. Those who laughed at the biddy's forewarning, alarmed when husband number 2 did indeed keel over on the figured date.
That is ridiculous. It sounds like some Amdra. You know when you pay to go around a tour of Chester and they're like, they didn't listen to the biddy's forewarning. Like the local Amdra group is some 50-year-old guy.
He's brilliant.
Who still calls it the Scottish play. Jesus.
She is a good woman.
Oh, that's so embarrassing.
Isn't it awful?
Yeah.
I went on one of those ghost tours in Cornwall years ago, and I knew it wasn't going to be good when it was led by a man called Shanty Baba, who was wearing an ethnic hat. And he was a middle-aged white man. You know those hats with mirrors and an ill-fitting one of those, and he carried a lantern, which he rapidly got bored of. And he was utterly tedious. But that last memory of it is standing by this beach in St. Ives with my boyfriend at the time, and us just looking at each other because he was telling the story and he just kept going, woo!
Oh, God. He hasn't got his own hype man to do it.
It was so bad. I'm going to Google him later.
Shanty Baba.
Shanty Baba.
It sounds like a make of rum, doesn't it? So what also happened as well is Tillie's family started to shop her in. 2 of her cousins rocked up and they said, you need to exhume our siblings because they died after going for dinner with Tillie. 3 of them had been in some argument with her.
Yep.
With her. In fact, 3 of them, their mum had been in an argument with Tillie, so they think that she killed the kids as a revenge against the mum. And one of them that she was cross with anyway, that she'd fallen out with. So they think that that she'd poisoned them. They dug them up and they found that it had been poisoned with arsenic. Also, I think it was in Nellie's backyard, they found 3 small graves. Basically, they found 2 twins that were Nellie's and one of her grandchildren. So the twins were apparently bumped off, which is just awful to kill babies. They're bumped off because her husband doubted that they were his, so she was like, all right, well, I'll get rid of them then, which shows
All right, I'll put them in the bin then.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? How callous is that? And then the grandchild was because her daughter had criticised, and I quote, her manner of living. So, of course, the logical step was to poison her child.
Yeah.
Which I think, in that case, that probably stacks up.
Yeah.
I would criticise someone's manner of living if they thought that the best conflict resolution was to poison a child.
Different times, though.
Yeah.
Different times.
And apparently she became famous for she would feed poisoned candy to the neighbours and the kids in the neighbourhood. And the dogs.
It suggests that people kept coming back, though.
Yeah, exactly.
For that
it
candy.
is delicious, though, isn't it? It is delicious.
It's like having the shits for.
And it's fish tikka, isn't it? But that's how I feel about some things. Like, you know, when you find out what's in a turkey twizzler or a Red Bull and you're like, still really nice though, innit?
I'm like that. I've just had some corned beef, actually.
That's just hooves and anuses,
love
isn't
a
it?
slice of corned beef. Love a bit of fried spam as well.
Oh, no. I can't eat any, like, meat from a tin.
Fried spam, delicious.
No war food. Nothing like that.
Love a bit of war food.
If it was knocking around when powdered egg was, I'm not interested.
I like camp coffee as well.
Oh,
I don't
really?
drink coffee. Yeah, I don't know if anyone knows, but I am actually northern. If you're with any doubt before fried spam, I'm out.
Corned beef hash, is that what you have?
Well, I would have it, but I just eat it out the packet in the fridge.
Oh my god, that's
I
disgusting.
like to wrap it around a boiled egg on occasion.
Oh, what, when you really want to spoil
Yeah,
yourself? Is that a
free range.
northern Ferrero Rocher?
Absolutely delicious.
Anyway, back to death. From one horrible death to another. So by this time there was 12 people dead at Tillie's hands. 7 were very ill.
And someone was missing.
Yeah, this guy called Myers was just missing.
I'm actually thinking he just was like, I'm getting away from her. I'm doing a runner. Missing with intent.
Who knows?
I think he might have been.
He could be on Broadway by now.
It could be. So he's gone. They didn't ever find any evidence of what had happened to him.
No, he just disappeared off the face of the earth. And also the neighbours came forward and said she'd said our dogs were barking too loudly. We told her to mind her own business, and the next day the dogs were dead.
Ooh.
And they thought she was just psychic. This was everywhere in the news because it was 2 women, and because they were ugly, and because they were foreign, it got almost as much as attention as the beautiful women.
Yeah.
There was rumours. She was known as the High Priestess of the Bluebeard clique. So there was this sort of theory that she was part of a network of women who were wronged by lovers and were sick of being sort of treated badly by men. So
God, it beats a
their
book
husbands.
club, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
That
certainly
is,
does.
yeah.
Fuck Zumba. Well, it was known as the Poison Ring, which again sounds like a sexual position.
Poison ring sounds like being bummed off somebody you don't like. It's like, if you're going to do it...
Yeah, I don't want you in the front.
Yeah.
I don't have to look at you.
You're not going in the front. Just get it over with.
There was this rumour that she was part of this massive, very organised network of women who were sort of trying to kill men off.
Don't believe it.
No, it's bullshit, innit? So Nellie, who spoke really bad English, worse than Tillie's.
She was a good woman.
She was a good woman, though. She said that it was when the police were like, right, you're in here because you murdered some people, because it was her son who shopped her in. She said, no, it's a joke that got out of hand. And they were like, well, there's 2 there's 3 dead kids in your garden, so it is definitely a joke that got very far out of hand.
When I commit to a joke, I see it through to the end. She'd probably win, like, the Fosters in Edinburgh.
Oh, absolutely,
That was totally different. What a great show.
This is before she was able to put cling film on a toilet as well. Apparently she was quite naive and quite soft, and they thought that she'd been led along by Tillie, but she used to, when she knew photographers were coming and interview, she'd do her hair for it. I've seen pictures of them. If that's what she looks like after she's had 10 minutes on herself, she's a horror.
I've seen one picture. Have you seen pictures of both of them?
Yeah, they look like, you know, when Les Dawson and the guy who played Reg dressed up as 2 women, they basically look like that.
They were of that era where everyone looked 80.
Yes. Yeah, like, I think Russell Brand's got a bit about this, but you know when you see, I was looking through pictures recently of, like, my grandparents, and my dad was like, oh, that was so-and-so on their wedding day, and you're like, didn't get married till they were 62. You know, they look
third
so
wedding.
Yeah, so old. Tillie was pretty cold. I think she was referred to as an automaton while she was in there. And she said, I didn't shoot nobody. I didn't poison nobody. I didn't kill nobody. Everybody pick on me. Everybody make eyes at me like they're going to eat me. Which is sounding like Rihanna lyrics.
I was kind of wanting to beatbox over that as you were saying it.
She says, why did they make eyes at me? I tell the truth. Anything I did to myself. Nobody else. So she denied it. She denied that she committed any murders. She did imply in some cases that it was alcohol poisoning and not her, which I think is a load of fucking shit because they were all like full of arsenic.
Yeah.
This really ugly thing happened at trial. The judge was a champion of eugenics.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's really taken a turn, hasn't it?
There we go.
Suddenly, murder's not the most distasteful part of this podcast. But he genuinely was, and he asked for a psychiatrist to assess the 2 women, and they came out as having an IQ of 11, but they were tested in English, and they didn't speak any English, so of course they're going to have an extremely low IQ in inverted
I've got
commas.
an IQ of 11. 11 geniuses. Thank you, good night.
What you don't know is that we're sitting under a framed letter from Mensa accepting Rachel in. But he was true, and he basically said that because one of Nellie's cousin's kids had learning difficulties, that was proof that the whole family was defective and should be wiped out.
Oh, right. Oh.
Which is the next reasonable leap to make, isn't it?
Nothing wrong with that at all.
This whole trial was a shit show.
Yeah.
Apparently the judge was like constantly shouting, "This is not a theatre!"
This is not a theatre. It just sounds like if you went to watch something at like Contact Theatre in Manchester or one of these sort of funded young people things.
Heavily funded, yeah.
That would blare out, "This is not a theatre."
Someone will do a forward roll with one leg onto the stage and then shake a spray can and then graffiti right like "fuck Cameron" and then shout, "This is not a theatre!" And then loads of Japanese kids will run on and then
someone would jump out of a bin all that kind of stuff, and they'd make music on cutlery.
This is not a theatre! This is not a theatre!
So I believe that's what it was like.
I think I've paid 15 quid to sit through some of those things before now and been furious when I've left. But apparently they were calling up loads of witnesses who were a right fucking laugh. There was 2 gravediggers and a lady gravedigger called up. One of them was this gravedigger called John, and they said, did you see her carrying on in any extramarital affairs? You know about John, the one that she was having an affair with her Frank. She said, once I seen him kiss her. And then they went, and then what? And he said, and then she put the newspapers in front of the window and I couldn't see anymore. And apparently the whole courtroom pissed it, including Tillie, who was on trial for murder.
Having a perv with her.
But the judge was really harsh. He wanted the death penalty.
There wasn't any women that had been executed.
No women had been executed up until then. And in fact, no women had been sentenced for life, which is what she ended up getting. Ooh. So imagine if she had nicer tits.
I know.
She probably would have got off with community service. Maybe she'd have ended up in one of those plays. This is not a theatre. This is not a theatre.
Nellie walked free.
Exactly. This shows how lax they were towards women. That Nellie just walked free because they I think they threw out the arsenic charge and they didn't think they could get her on anything else, so the judge didn't pursue it.
It's very interesting.
Well, it's interesting, snapshot of the time that these 2 sort of brutish-looking Polish women, or this one Polish woman who basically has the world's worst midlife crisis, and that's including people who buy leather trousers and I've always wanted a pair of leather jeans.
And I think at age 55, now is the time.
Well, say that. I've worn some. I think I bought a pair, just to see what it was like when I was in my 20s. I looked like a DFS sofa with a yeast infection. So it's not a mistake that only older people can make.
No, that's very true. And I think only really Steven Tyler from Aerosmith can
Yeah,
get away
that's
with it.
true, yeah.
Definitely.
But she basically had a midlife crisis, started bumping off loads of people. But because she was ugly, she got imprisoned in life and died in prison. But because she was a woman, she also didn't get executed, which would have been the right... Well, I don't believe in the death penalty, but would have been at that time the right thing.
The equal judgment.
And what the newspaper said at the time, Tillie Klimek went to the penitentiary because she'd never gone to the beauty parlour.
He's right.
It was a woman, actually, Rachel. Come on, don't be a
Oh,
sexist.
fucking hell. Have I done that? No, it was a man, wasn't it?
No, it was a woman.
Oh, for shit's sake. Well, there we go. Turns out I'm ageist and sexist. And terrible food taste. We've all learnt something.
Yeah, we've
here.
been on quite the journey, haven't we? We're pretty excited about the next one.
Yes, it's a big one.
Yeah.
It is.
We've been putting this one off for a while because it's so many he's killed.
We ask for suggestions quite often on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter if you will. Neil Lenihan suggested a South American one. So we are going to do Pedro Lopez.
Yeah. Which is the most South American name I've heard.
Yeah.
It's
Pedro
like
Lopez.
it's like the Gareth Jones of South America. No, I think we've been scared about doing this one because the body count is really high.
Yeah.
And also what you find with like Russia and South America is it's very hard to get any details because the police are fucking shocking.
Yeah.
And there's like, sorry, we have not paperwork.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to find details about
Not
them.
paperwork for this. No.
But murder is a big sport in South America.
Yeah, it
Big
is.
sport. There's a couple of big ones.
Huge
Is this guy the
pastime.
Beast of the Andes?
Monster of the Andes.
Monster of the Andes, that's it.
Monster, beast, whatever.
Potato. So this has been episode 20. This has been Tillie Klimek. So thank you very much for listening. If you like it, please rate us on iTunes. Nicely, obviously.
Yeah, if you don't like it, just
Yeah,
why
just
are you
fuck
even
off. It's
listening
free,
now?
mate. Come on, grow up. Thanks very much for listening.
Bye.